A flicker of disbelief shot through me as I watched the door close behind him, the sound echoing like a final sentence in a story I never wanted to read. My heart pounded so fiercely I feared it would shatter my ribcage, each beat a deafening reminder of betrayal. In that gut-wrenching instant I felt both abandoned and frozen in time. The air was thick with the unspoken truth. My father had left us, not out of malice but for a new beginning with a new family. And as I stood there, grappling with the raw sting of loss, my brother's reaction unfolded before me like a silent, shattering confession that left me utterly speechless. I still remember the exact afternoon when the weight of his departure first sank in. It was a gray, overcast day, the kind where even the sky seemed to mourn. I had been idly scrolling through my phone when a text message arrived. A simple, unadorned message from my mother that read, "Your father left today." No explanation, no farewell, just a curt notification that shattered the fragile semblance of normalcy we had clung to for so long. I felt like I was in a surreal dream, unable to wake up, unable to comprehend that the man who had been the pillar of my childhood was gone, leaving behind nothing but echoes and unanswered questions. My older brother, Jason, had always been the rock in our turbulent family life, a steady presence amid the chaos. When he learned of our father's departure, his face transformed into an inscrutable mask of numbness. At first, I thought he was simply processing the news, but his reaction soon revealed a depth of emotion I had never expected. He sat in the dim light of our shared bedroom, his eyes unfocused as if he were staring into a void. I approached him tentatively, my voice trembling as I tried to break through the silence. "Jason, are you okay?" His response was a mere shake of his head, followed by a deep, guttural sigh that resonated with a sorrow so profound it echoed in the empty spaces of my heart. 4 days afterward, the house felt like a mausoleum of memories. Every room, every object seemed imbued with the ghost of our father's presence, a lingering trace that only deepened the void he had left behind. I wandered through the halls in a daze, touching old photographs and mementos, desperate to cling to fragments of a past that was rapidly dissolving into nothingness. It was in these moments of quiet despair that I began to see the subtle shifts in our family dynamics. Jason, once a bastion of strength, now moved through our home like a specter, his eyes perpetually downcast, as though he were trying to avoid meeting his own reflection in a shattered mirror. I remember one particular evening when the silence between us became too heavy to bear. We were sitting in the living room, the television casting a flickering glow on our somber faces, when Jason finally spoke. His voice was low, almost inaudible over the hum of the set. "I never thought it would end like this." His words, simple and unadorned, carried the weight of years of unspoken hurt and abandonment. I reached out, placing a tentative hand on his shoulder, hoping to offer some measure of comfort. But as soon as my skin made contact with his, he recoiled slightly, as if the touch of family was too painful a reminder of what we had lost. In the days that followed, I sought refuge in the solitude of my room, the only space that felt truly my own. I tried to make sense of the unraveling tapestry of our lives. How could a man who had always been so present simply vanish, leaving behind a trail of questions and shattered dreams? My thoughts turned to memories of happier times, the sound of our father's laughter during family dinners, the way he used to ruffle Jason's hair as a playful gesture, the quiet moments when he would sit with me and share stories of his own childhood. Those recollections, once a source of comfort, now stung with a bittersweet reminder of a love that had been so brutally abandoned. Jason, however, seemed to retreat further into himself. I would find him late at night, sitting on the back steps of our house, staring blankly at the darkened sky. He rarely spoke of our father, and when he did, his tone was flat, devoid of the usual anger or grief that I had anticipated. Instead, there was a resignation in his eyes, a sense that he had long ago accepted this harsh reality, even if it still left him hollow. One night, unable to bear the oppressive quiet any longer, I followed him outside. The cool night air was a stark contrast to the warmth of our once vibrant home. "Jason," I whispered, "why do you look like you're not even surprised?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he continued to stare at the stars, his expression unreadable. After a long pause, he finally spoke in a voice that trembled with a fragile mixture of sorrow and bitterness. "I guess I expected this for a long time. Dad always had a way of disappearing when things got too hard." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had always seen him as the optimistic one, the one who believed in second chances and the enduring strength of family bonds. Yet here he was, revealing a cynicism that I had never noticed before, as though the abandonment had unearthed a deep-seated belief that love was transient, that loyalty was nothing more than an illusion. That revelation left me reeling, forcing me to confront the uncomfortable possibility that perhaps our father's departure was not an isolated act of selfishness but a symptom of a larger, more systemic failure within our family. It was as if the foundations of our childhood had been built on shifting sands, destined to collapse at the slightest tremor of discontent. In the weeks that followed, I began to document my feelings in a worn leather journal I had received as a birthday gift years ago. I poured my heart out onto those pages, trying to capture the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me: betrayal, confusion, sorrow, and a desperate yearning for answers. Every line of ink was a testament to the pain of losing the man who had been both a hero and a flawed human being. I wrote about the nights I spent awake, haunted by dreams of his absence, and the mornings I woke with a gnawing emptiness that no amount of coffee or idle chatter could fill. With each passing day, the act of writing became both a catharsis and a confrontation with the unvarnished truth of our fractured lives. One afternoon, as I sat by the window watching the rain trace intricate patterns on the glass, I received a call from my mother. Her voice, usually so gentle and reassuring, was strained and distant. "Your father? He's started a new life," she said haltingly, as though the words themselves were foreign. "He's got a new family now." The words reverberated in my mind, each syllable a sharp reminder of the irrevocable change that had befallen us. I tried to muster some semblance of calm, but the news only deepened the fissures within me. How could he move on so easily, as if the years of shared memories and hard-won trust meant nothing in the grand scheme of his new beginnings? In the midst of my internal turmoil, I noticed a peculiar shift in Jason's demeanor. While I remained engulfed in a sea of sorrow and anger, he began to exhibit an unsettling calm, a detached acceptance that bordered on indifference. One evening, as we sat in the kitchen with only the hum of the refrigerator for company, he suddenly turned to me, his eyes glazed over as if he were gazing into an abyss. "It's like he was never really here," he murmured almost to himself. I searched his face for a sign of vulnerability, but all I found was an impenetrable shield of stoic resignation. His reaction left me speechless, not because it was unexpected, but because it was so profoundly different from the raw, unfiltered grief I had anticipated. It was as if, in his own way, he had already made peace with the absence of a father, leaving me to wonder if I was the only one still clinging to the remnants of our shattered family. As the days turned into weeks and the initial shock began to fade, I started noticing subtle changes in our interactions. Jason's once familiar laughter now held a tinge of irony, and his smiles, though still present, no longer reached his eyes. He seemed to be navigating a silent path, one that diverged sharply from my own journey of heartbreak and disbelief. I remember one particularly poignant moment when we were both sitting in the backyard, the fading light casting long shadows over the grass. I broke the silence. "Do you ever wish things could go back to the way they were?" Jason's response was a slow exhale, a sound filled with a mixture of resignation and sorrow. "Sometimes," he admitted softly, "but then I remember that nothing ever really goes back. We're all just trying to survive the changes." His words resonated with me, echoing the sentiment that perhaps, in the face of such irrevocable loss, the only option was to adapt, even if it meant leaving behind the illusions of a perfect family. In the months that followed, the impact of our father's departure began to manifest in unexpected ways. I found solace in small rituals: a morning run through the quiet streets, the simple act of cooking dinner, or the familiar comfort of a well-worn book. Yet even as I tried to rebuild the pieces of my life, there was an ever-present ache, a reminder that something irreplaceable had been lost. I began to seek refuge in the memories of our childhood, a time when our family was united by shared laughter, even if the underlying currents of tension were always there, hidden beneath the surface. I recalled the long summer evenings spent playing catch in the yard, the sound of our father's hearty laugh echoing through the open windows, and the way Jason and I would scheme together, imagining a future full of promise and possibility. Those memories, though bittersweet, became a lifeline, a tether to a past that, despite its imperfections, had defined who we were. The more I dwelled on the past, however, the more I realized that our father's departure was not the end of our story but the beginning of a painful, transformative chapter. I began to see it as a catalyst for change, a moment that forced us to confront the realities of our own identities and the bonds that held us together. Jason, in his quiet, understated way, became a mirror reflecting my own inner struggles. His unspoken acceptance of our father's absence challenged me to re-examine my own capacity for forgiveness, for understanding that sometimes the people we love are not capable of the loyalty we expect from them. One crisp autumn evening, as the leaves turned brilliant shades of red and gold, Jason and I found ourselves on the porch, the world around us bathed in a melancholic beauty. I asked him about his dreams, his hopes for the future, and whether the pain of our father's departure still lingered in his heart. He hesitated before answering, his gaze fixed on the horizon. I used to think that if I could just make everything perfect, if I could be the one who held everything together, then maybe I wouldn't feel this emptiness. But now I see that perfection is an illusion, and the scars we carry are part of who we become. His words, spoken with a quiet intensity, struck a chord deep within me. In that moment, I realized that our journeys of healing were not meant to be identical, even though we shared the same wound. While I clung to the hope of reclaiming what was lost, Jason had found a way to accept the impermanence of it all, to find beauty even in the broken pieces. As the seasons changed, so too did the dynamics within our home. Our mother, ever the silent warrior, took on the role of mediator, striving to bridge the widening chasm between her sons and the memory of a husband who had abandoned them. She organized family dinners, encouraged long walks together, and even suggested that we seek counseling to navigate the turbulent waters of our grief. Reluctantly, we agreed, and it was during these sessions that I began to see the intricate layers of our pain laid bare on a therapist's notepad. I learned that grief was not a linear process but a labyrinth of emotions: anger, sadness, guilt, and occasionally, moments of unexpected laughter when we recalled the absurdity of our childhood antics. In those sessions, Jason and I slowly started to peel back the layers of our shared trauma, discovering that even in the darkest moments, there were glimmers of resilience that shone through. One day, during a particularly intense session, Jason broke down in tears as he recounted a memory from his adolescence, a time when our father had promised to take us on a fishing trip that never materialized. I always felt like he was the one who held us together, he confessed, his voice trembling with the weight of regret. And when he left, it was like the glue of our family just melted away. I listened, my own eyes welling up with unshed tears, as I realized that the void left by our father's absence was not just about missing him, but about the loss of a shared identity, a collective narrative that had defined our very existence. In that moment, I understood that our brotherhood, though tested by betrayal and abandonment, was the one constant we still had, a fragile bond that, if nurtured, could help us piece together a semblance of wholeness. There were times when I found myself wandering through the old haunts of my childhood, retracing the steps of a life that now seemed so distant. I visited the park where we used to play, the corner store where we'd buy candy on hot summer afternoons, and even our old school, where the echoes of laughter and whispered secrets still lingered in the halls. Each place was a repository of memories, both joyous and painful, and I realized that in confronting them, I was slowly coming to terms with the reality that life was not about clinging to the past but embracing the uncertain promise of the future. One chilly winter night, as I sat by a crackling fire, I recalled a conversation with Jason that had occurred during one of our rare moments of candid reflection. He had said, "I don't know if I can ever forgive him completely, but I do know that holding on to this anger is like carrying a heavy stone in my heart." His words resonated with me long after the conversation ended, a constant reminder that forgiveness was not about absolving someone of their wrongdoing, but about liberating oneself from the burden of perpetual resentment. I began to see our father's departure as a turning point, a painful catalyst that forced us to redefine our relationships and to find new sources of strength within ourselves. In the wake of all that had happened, I discovered that healing was neither linear nor predictable. There were moments of sheer, unadulterated grief when the loss felt too immense to bear, and other moments of quiet clarity when I recognized that, despite everything, life continued to unfold in all its messy, beautiful complexity. Jason and I started to forge a new kind of bond, one that was not defined solely by our shared pain, but by a mutual determination to rise above it, to create a future where the scars of the past would serve as reminders of our resilience rather than symbols of our failure. One summer afternoon, as the sunlight streamed through the open windows of our modest home, I found myself sitting on the back porch with Jason. We talked about everything and nothing, the trivial details of our day, the silly jokes we used to share, and the hopes that we harbored for a future free from the shadows of our father's absence. In his eyes, I saw a glimmer of the boy he once was, unburdened by cynicism, and for a fleeting moment, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to reclaim the innocence that had been so brutally stripped away. The conversation meandered like a gentle stream, each word a small step toward healing, until I realized that while our father's choices had irrevocably altered the course of our lives, they had not completely defined us. There were, of course, nights when the weight of solitude pressed heavily on my chest, when the memories of his laughter and the warmth of his embrace seemed like distant echoes in an empty house. During those nights, I would sit by my window, The city lights a blurred mosaic of hope and despair, and whisper into the darkness, "Why did you leave us?" The silence that followed was a bitter reply, a reminder that some questions might never find an answer. Yet, in that silence, I also sensed a quiet determination, a promise that even in the absence of a guiding light, we would learn to navigate our own paths however uncertain they might be. As the years slowly unfolded, the raw pain of that fateful day began to recede into a background hum, a constant reminder of our loss that no longer consumed every waking moment. Jason, who had once seemed so detached and resigned, gradually emerged from the cocoon of his grief, embracing a new life with tentative optimism. I too found solace in unexpected places, a newfound passion for photography that allowed me to capture the ephemeral beauty of everyday moments, the laughter of strangers on busy streets, and the quiet dignity of aging faces that told stories of resilience and survival. I learned that healing was a process, a tapestry woven from moments of vulnerability, bursts of joy, and the relentless pursuit of meaning in a world that often seemed indifferent. I started to appreciate the small victories, a shared smile with Jason, the satisfaction of a well-composed photograph, the simple act of breathing in the crisp morning air. Each day became a lesson in rediscovery, a chance to reclaim a part of myself that had been lost in the turmoil of abandonment. And while the memory of my father's departure remained etched in the corners of my mind, it no longer held the power to define me entirely. There were still moments when the pain would catch me off guard. A familiar scent, a snippet of conversation, the echo of a laugh that reminded me of better times, and in those moments I would pause, allow myself to grieve, and then slowly, with deliberate care, continue on my way. Jason and I forged a fragile truce with the past, understanding that while the wounds of abandonment might never fully heal, they could coexist with the hope of a brighter future. Our shared experiences, the unspoken language of brotherhood, became the foundation upon which we rebuilt our lives. One particularly transformative day, I found myself driving along a winding country road, the landscape bathed in the golden hues of late afternoon. The open sky and endless fields stirred something deep within me, a realization that life, despite its heartbreak, offered infinite possibilities. I pulled over at a small overlook, stepped out of the car, and gazed at the horizon. In that vast expanse, I felt both insignificant and profoundly connected to the world around me. It was as if the universe, in its infinite wisdom, was whispering that even the deepest scars could give rise to new beginnings. Time, they say, is a relentless teacher. And as the years passed, I came to understand that the pain of abandonment was only one chapter in a much larger story, a story that was still being written with each sunrise and every breath. Jason's reaction, that inscrutable silence and the subsequent slow acceptance, had taught me that grief is not a competition, nor is it a measure of love. It is a personal journey, one that each of us must navigate in our own way, with our own pace and on our own terms. I began to see that our father's decision, as devastating as it was, had also inadvertently set in motion a series of events that allowed us to discover strengths we never knew we had. In the quiet moments of introspection, I realized that despite the betrayal and the abandonment, there was beauty in our resilience. Our brotherhood, forged in the crucible of shared pain, had become a testament to the human spirit's capacity to endure, to adapt, and ultimately to forgive, not for the sake of the one who hurt us but for our own liberation. Looking back now, I understand that the journey to healing was not a straight line but a winding path filled with unexpected detours, moments of profound sorrow, and yes, glimpses of joy. Each step, each stumble, and each triumph brought me closer to a version of myself that was stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. I began to cherish the moments spent with Jason, the quiet evenings over a shared meal, the long walks that allowed us to talk about our dreams and fears, and even the silent moments when our presence was enough to convey all that words could not express. There were times when I wondered if I would ever truly come to terms with the void left by my father's absence. But as the seasons turned and life continued its relentless march forward, I discovered that healing was not about erasing the past but about integrating it into the fabric of who I had become. I learned to see my scars not as symbols of weakness, but as badges of honor, reminders of battles fought, lessons learned, and the indomitable will to rise above adversity. Now, as I sit in the soft glow of twilight reflecting on the many years that have passed since that fateful day, I find myself filled with a quiet gratitude for the journey that has brought me here. The pain, the betrayal, and the heartache have all been transformed in time into a source of inner strength, a strength that I now carry with me like a well-worn cloak, shielding me from the cold winds of despair. And though my father's choices remain a mystery I may never fully understand, I have come to accept that sometimes, the most profound lessons in life are learned not from the comfort of certainty, but from the depths of uncertainty and the courage to embrace change. In the end, I realized that the story of our family is not defined solely by the day my father left or by the silence of a brother who bore his own burden of grief. It is defined by the resilience we discovered in the face of abandonment, by the quiet moments of forgiveness that allowed us to rebuild our lives, and by the unspoken understanding that even in the midst of profound loss, love can still find a way to endure. As I close my eyes and let the memories wash over me, I feel the steady rhythm of hope beating in my heart, a promise that no matter how shattered we may feel, we can always find the strength to piece ourselves back together, one fragile, beautiful fragment at a time. Every day now is a testament to that truth, a mosaic of small victories, tender reconciliations, and the ongoing journey toward a future where the wounds of yesterday are not burdens to bear, but chapters in a story of redemption and growth. Jason and I, despite our differences in coping and understanding, have come to embody the very essence of what it means to move forward, to find light in the darkness, and to build a life that honors both the past and the promise of tomorrow. In moments of quiet reflection, I sometimes wonder if our father, wherever he may be, ever realized the impact of his departure. Did he understand the ripple effects of his choices on the fragile hearts he left behind? Or was he too caught up in the allure of his new beginning to see the lives he had upended? These questions linger like distant echoes, reminders that not every mystery finds a neat resolution. Yet, in accepting that some questions will forever remain unanswered, I have found a strange solace, a recognition that the journey of healing is as much about accepting uncertainty as it is about seeking closure. The path I walk today is not an easy one. It is paved with memories both painful and poignant, with moments of regret and flashes of unexpected joy. But it is my path, a tapestry woven from the threads of love, loss, and the unwavering hope that no matter how deeply we are wounded, we can learn to live again. And in that hope, I have discovered a strength that transcends the scars of the past, a strength that whispers softly in the quiet of the night and promises that even the most fractured hearts can learn to beat in unison once more. As I continue to navigate the complexities of life without the guiding presence of the man who once anchored our family, I have come to cherish the bonds that remain unbroken. Jason, with all his quiet stoicism and hidden depths, has become not just a brother but a mirror reflecting the unspoken truths that bind us. Our shared experiences, the silent moments of understanding, and even the painful memories of abandonment have all contributed to a relationship that, while forever changed, still holds the promise of redemption. In the long arc of our lives, I now see that the day my father left was not the end, but rather the beginning of a journey that has led me through the valleys of despair and up the steep slopes of self-discovery. It has taught me that even in the face of betrayal, there is a path to healing, a way to honor the past without being consumed by it. And in that journey, I have learned to find beauty in the broken pieces, to see the light that emerges from the darkness, and to embrace the truth that every ending is, in its own way, the start of something new. Even now, as I write these words in the quiet solitude of an evening that feels both timeless and transient, I am filled with a sense of quiet determination. The pain of abandonment may never fully fade, but it has become a part of me, a reminder of all that I have endured and all that I have overcome. And in that enduring spirit I carry forward, not as a victim of my past, but as a survivor, a seeker of truth, and a believer in the transformative power of love. In the end, our family may never be the same as it once was, but I have come to understand that sometimes, the most profound changes in life lead us to discover parts of ourselves we never knew existed. And though my father's departure left a void that can never be completely filled, the bonds of brotherhood, the quiet resilience of the human spirit, and the endless capacity for renewal have all become the foundation upon which I now build my future. A future defined not by the ghosts of yesterday, but by the promise of tomorrow, lit by the soft, enduring glow of hope.